Corey. I'm the first vice president of the PSC CUNY, faculty member at Hunter College, and welcome to our Union Hall. We're so thrilled to have you here. It seems very appropriate to talk about affordability with mayoral candidates here in the Union Hall, where we work on issues of fair pay, safe workplaces. Earlier today, I was on a phone call trying to organize a session with some of our faculty who are going to teach students at CUNY how to unionize their workplaces so that they can survive and they can stay in school. Which they really shouldn't have to do. They should just be able to study and be students. But they are often working inside of households, right, that keep those households afloat. Here in this Union Hall, we talk a lot about the crisis of adjunctification, and that the majority of teachers who teach at CUNY make poverty wages as adjuncts, because that's what we decided to do to higher education. And sometimes we think about those adjuncts like running around and patching courses together and the difficulties and the poverty of their wages. But there's also another kind of adjunct. For example, there's more than 1,000 UFT teachers who teach at CUNY, who teach at night and in the summer. They teach English, composition, and history, and science, and they do so because even their full-time municipal worker wage, which is in the upper half of what municipal workers make, isn't enough to afford to live in the city. And that's why we're here. So it's my pleasure to welcome you all here. And it's really a pleasure to next introduce Theo Moore, Executive Director of Align.
Let me just hand it over so we can get some ground rules on interpretation first.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Felix Gardon. I am the co-chair of the New York Network of Worker Cooperatives, and also a member of the collective Coqui Interpretations and Oasis Training. We're going to create a space of language justice tonight, understanding that right now we are under attack with the dismantling of the diversity, equity, and inclusivity programs, and a lot of us are losing our voices in the spaces. Today we're going to be providing Spanish language interpretation. You can already hear my colleague Ramon, who's doing simultaneous work, and we'll be doing that during the day. As we do that, we ask you to please keep in mind 3 signs to do this. If you see me doing this, what does it mean? Anybody knows? If you see me doing this, what does it mean?
One mic.
One mic, one voice. We don't want to choose which of the voices here are more important. And if we do this, what does it mean? Slow, I'm not pulling tapping. Slow. You need to hear your message and be able to convey it so everybody can get it. Have a great meeting, and we're going to be here to support you. Anybody has problems with equipment, let us know. There's more equipment in the front if anybody needs equipment to hear interpretation. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Y'all excited? Yeah. So folks know my name is Theo Moore. I'm the Executive Director of Align, and I'm excited to welcome you all to the Affordability for All Mayoral Forum. Obviously want to give a big shout out and thanks to the folks at PSC CUNY for providing this beautiful space to us. I want to also give a shout out to the huge coalition that actually made this possible, so I'm going to read all of the organization names. There's a lot of names, a lot of letters. I'm going to say all of the organization names out in full. And if you don't hear your organization name, shout it out at the end. All right, so we got Caring Majority Rising, Citizen Action New York. We got the Communication Workers of America. Yeah. We got Human Services Council. We got clap for everyone. All right. We got Jews for Racial and Economic Justice. We got Milk Action. New Economy Project. New York City Affairs, New Yorkers United for Childcare, New York Communities for Change, we got the New York City Central Labor Council, we got OPE-IU Local 153, we got One Fair Wage in the house, the People's Plan, obviously once again our host here at PSC CUNY, the Riders Alliance, Strong Economy for All, Lieutenant Block, and Women Creating Change. Any organizations I missed? Great. All right, I did pretty good.
Good job. Hey.
And finally, where's Tall at? Tall? Everyone, huge round of applause to Tall Freeman. They are the major person that organized this whole event. This would not have been possible without them. Thank you. You made this happen. I appreciate it. So, at Align, we fight for safe work, fair wages, climate justice, corporate accountability, and how all those things intersect. And I think that's what we were really thinking about when we started to build out this affordability forum. Because it's not just New York City that is having an affordability crisis. We look all across the state, and there's an affordability crisis. And obviously, this is stemming from the fact that America has an affordability crisis. Like when you look at it, and you're hearing a lot about it now, the way that folks are going about the affordability crisis, and how it stems from the fact that, America is in debt, apparently. I did not know this, but like trillions and trillions of dollars. And a lot of this stems from our affordability crisis because we're taking things in really, really stupid ways. The root of America's affordability crisis is really in three sections. One, our stupid immigration laws. People don't really connect our affordability crisis with how asinine our immigration laws are. One is that you have an administration that is actively trying to push out immigrants, undocumented and alike, not understanding that is a tax base. Immigrants pay taxes.
Yes, yes, yes.
You don't know that? If you didn't know that, then please know that. In New York State, it is billions upon billions upon billions of dollars each year, even though a lot of folks don't even benefit from the services that their taxes actually pay for. So we need to understand that. The second thing that we're dealing with is that we have an aging population. We have an aging population, and the amount of deaths that we have in the United States is not made up by the amount of births. And the reason is because it costs a lot to have a kid. And it's not that people don't want to have children, it's that they start looking at their balance sheets. They're like, oh, if I have a child, I have to think about child care. How much does child care cost? Oh, I have a child, now I have to, think about going from this one-bedroom apartment, I have to find a two-bedroom apartment. How much is that going to cost? Forget about it if I need to buy a house. These are reasons why we have an affordability crisis, like that tax base that we had, is starting to dwindle down because people can't afford to have children. People are thinking about their housing. And the other reason is that, and this is the big reason, is that a lot of people who should be paying taxes don't. So when we think about, our billionaires and the corporations that they run and how much taxes they're paying as opposed to the people in this room, you can find the root of the affordability crisis right there. We all see, Elon Musk doing absolute terror in Washington, D.C., trying to, cut the Department of Education, stealing FEMA dollars, from New York City, cutting all of these agencies. Tesla paid $0 in taxes last year. $0. And I see a lot of ugly Cybertrucks on the street, so they must be doing good. $0 in taxes. Now we need to be talking about that. We need to talk about how do we increase the tax base. At some point we should have a conversation about how we actually spend our tax dollars, but I'm not getting into defense spending because I don't want to get in trouble tonight. I don't want to get in trouble tonight. But I do want to, offer up those things as like, when we think about the affordability crisis on a national level and how that actually trickles down into the state and then into our city. Like, if we had more money, we can offer child care. If we had more money, we can actually do real affordable housing, expansion of public housing. We could actually do some of those things. Right? Yeah. But hopefully we'll hear some solutions that we can actually implement on a local level from some of the candidates tonight. We do have 3 candidates with us tonight. We have Michael Blake with us tonight. So we can give it up for both. We have Zohran Mamdani here tonight. And we have Jessica Ramos here tonight. Unfortunately, we had some last-minute cancellations tonight. Controller Brad Lander will be here via a video. He had to cancel last minute, mostly because he is reacting and responding to a lot of things that are coming down from the federal government right now. And then Senator Zohran Mamdani is actually still in Albany in a joint hearing and could not make it back in time. So we'll have videos from them. But for now, I'm going to pass it on to our moderator for the evening, Annie McDonough.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Annie McDonough. I am City Hall reporter at City and State Magazine. Thank you everyone for coming out tonight. I am actually now going to welcome our candidates who are here so far. Assembly Member Zohran Mamdani and former Assembly Member Michael Blake. If you guys want to come out. Don't know if they can hear me. Assembly Member Michael Blake? Yep. And Zohran Mamdani. And Senator Ramos will be joining us shortly. I'm going to ask each of you to make a short introduction to everyone here tonight, and then we'll hear from Controller Brad Lander and Senator Zohran Mamdani remotely. We'll start with former Assembly Member.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Michael Blake, and I'm running for mayor because it is simply too expensive to be in New York City right now. We have to address the true cost of living, which we can do with guaranteed income by having universal child care. We can focus on affordable housing right now by having a Mitchell-Lama 2.0 to change the game so we actually have a better chance. And having local median income instead of AMI, because AMI is simply not working right now. To focus very specifically around public transportation so that you can have safe and on-time trains, and also make sure that we're addressing the mental health crisis happening at the same time. But let's also be very clear. As Vice President Eric Adams is clearly doing everything possible to make sure that he's keeping himself out of jail. As the only person who has worked in the White House and the State House and locally, we have the experience in this moment. And if you have not had the chance to read it just before we came in this room, where you had 3 prosecutors who resigned because they will not accept the foolishness of what's coming from Donald Trump, where it was stated in the letter that the lead prosecutor was preparing to bring a superseding indictment on Eric Adams because he gave direction of destroying evidence. Let's be very clear. If you want to change, to make sure that we have a better New York City that we can all deserve, my name is Michael Blake, and I'm asking for your vote to be the next mayor of New York City. Our entire vision is at blake4nyc.com. I served in the Assembly for 6 years. I worked for President Obama for 6.5 years. I came back home because I want to help our city. If we want to change the game, we have to change our mayor. Thank you, everybody.
I was going to sit, but he gave me no choice. My name is Zohran Mamdani. I'm the Assembly Member for Astoria and Long Island City, and I'm running to be the next mayor of New York City. I stand before you about 4 months since we launched our campaign on October 23rd. And that time was very similar to this moment, when the crisis that we were seeing was corruption engulfing City Hall. And yet what we said then is true today, that for many New Yorkers cannot even afford to worry about what's happening in City Hall because they cannot afford to pay their rent. They cannot afford to pay their Con Ed bill, their Metro card, their childcare, their groceries. And so ever since we launched this campaign, we launched it with a commitment to having a relentless focus on an economic agenda. The opening was a three-pronged proposal. The first, to freeze the rent for close to 2.5 million New Yorkers who live in rent-stabilized units across this city. New Yorkers who have lived in units that were historically the bedrocks of economic stability, but have under this mayor become the sites of rent hike after rent hike after rent hike, the likes of which we haven't seen since another Republican was in City Hall. The second was to transform the slowest buses in the nation into a model for this country, making them fast and free, building on the successes I have seen firsthand as an assembly member who launched and won the Fix the MTA campaign, which included a historic free bus pilot that increased ridership by more than 30%, decreased assaults on bus drivers by 38.9%, and saw the largest increase in ridership coming from New Yorkers making $28,000 a year or less. And the third thing was to take the $20,000 to $25,000 annual expense of childcare off of the backs of working families across the city. Delivering universal childcare to New York families, whether their child is 5 years of age or 6 weeks of age. And in the months since then, we have continued on that focus, rolling out new proposals, including a commitment to build 200,000 new, affordable, union-built, permanently rent-stabilized homes across the next 10 years, to introduce a city-run pilot program of city-run grocery stores, one in each borough, that would guarantee lower prices. And just today, a commitment to raise the minimum wage in New York City to $30 by 2030.
Wow.
That speaks to the focus in our campaign, and I'm so excited to be here with you today, as we have been described as the campaign with the most momentum by the New York Times, and I hope to join each and every one of you in crossing the finish line on June 24th. Thank you very much.
To answer my first question, you've heard a lot about the importance of affordability, and I don't even tell anybody here why that's a top issue for voters. We've heard from candidates here already different lenses through which they're going to address affordability, whether that's housing, transit, groceries, childcare. As far as the format for this evening, you're going to hear members of different organizations and unions ask our candidates questions on a range of affordability subjects. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond. We're going to have time checks right up here to keep that to an exact 90 seconds. After that, candidates will have 30 seconds each to respond to questions from members of the press, including myself. Finally, we're going to have a speed round where I will ask the candidates a series of yes or no questions, also from both organizations. And you're going to respond with the thumbs up, thumbs down placards at your seats. No time for audience questions, but if you stick around and try to pound each of the candidates here, like I do in my job every day, you might get lucky and get your question asked, or answered rather. Before we jump into the topic at hand and what we've got laid out in the program, I want to get each of your reactions to some of the breaking news we've had today, and there's been a lot. Mayor Eric Adams met with the border czar, Tom Homan, today, and some of the news that came out of that meeting is that he's announced, the mayor, that he's moving to reopen Immigration and Customs Enforcement offices at Rikers. He's also talked about using the Charter Revision Commission to roll back the sanctuary law. What's your response to what we've heard come out of that meeting so far? And if elected, how would you deal with the Trump administration's targeting of sanctuary laws? And we do have a lot to get to tonight, so I want to ask you to keep that to a cool 60 seconds if you can. We'll start with Ms. Blake.
You have a man that's trying to stay at a jail who's kissing up to a fascist in D.C. And as someone who's a son of Jamaican immigrants myself, it's absolutely unacceptable what's happening in every regard. First, we've had the Trump administration and the Eric Adams administration effectively trying to divide us. It's not just a Latino community issue. It's for Africans, it's for Caribbeans, it's for all of us who are immigrants who have to be aligned in this right now. It is unconstitutional And especially when they're talking about having ICE, which is unacceptable to talk about reopening Rikers for that purpose, is unacceptable to many of you realize. But ICE at schools, unacceptable. ICE is a place of worship, unacceptable. ICE at the community center, unacceptable. All of these things are fundamentally wrong. And let's be clear, any conversation about rescinding birthright citizenship is unconstitutional. So let's just be very clear. The last 72 hours is the clearest indication once again. You have one man who has one job in mind in trying to stay out of jail. Our job is to make sure that we help our communities. And at the end of the day, as someone who was a co-sponsor of the DREAM Act and someone who's been consistently standing up for our immigrants, I'll make sure we protect our sanctuary cities and help our people in our cities.
What are they asking?
Someone might be
I think Senator Ramos might be arriving and be getting mic'd.
You know, we are a few subway stops from where I got my citizenship, maybe about 7 or 8 years ago. And what we are seeing from this mayor right now, to put it simply, is illegal. The mayor's proposal to bring ICE back onto Rikers Island is against the laws of New York City. This is not something that he can make happen through an executive order. But what we've seen time and again from this mayor is he has no regard for the laws of New York City and no regard for the people of New York City. And in his gambit to stay out of jail, he has shown himself willing to give up seemingly every New Yorker if they are within the crosshairs of the Trump administration. Just in the last 48 hours, we've seen what the minimum cost of this gambit is. It's more than $80 million that the federal government has taken out of New York City's bank account. But we know that that extends to him being against sanctuary city laws, refusing to tell students that they will be safe when they go to school, and we desperately need a new mayor who will not only stand up for the laws that we have, but strengthen them and make clear to every single New Yorker, because that's who is one of our neighbors, as everyone else in this room.
We might have Senator Ramos here, Senator Jessica Ramos. Senator, we are getting started in the program here, but I want to ask you to give a quick introduction and respond to the question I just asked the other candidates here, which is that Mayor Adams met with Tom Homan today, the borders are. The news that we heard come out of that meeting so far is that the mayor is moving to reopen Immigration and Customs Enforcement offices on Rikers. Also talked about rolling back sanctuary law through the Charter Revision Commission. What's your reaction to that? And if elected, how would you respond to the Trump administration's targeting of sanctuary cities differently?
Well, we're not going to take legal advice by somebody who's been indicted on 5 different charges. I don't care who took away the charges or didn't drop the charges. We have to get serious in New York City about putting systems in place in order to protect immigrants, transgender people, LGBTQ people, any single group that has been marginalized and will definitely been marginalized by national Christian fundamentalists. That is a very serious thing. Our government is being tested right now. So we have to stand up for the intro too. We have to stand up for each other now more than ever. My name is Jessica Ramos. I'm the chair of the Labor Committee in the New York State Senate. This is now my 7th legislative session. In the last 7 years, we have worked to pass legislation with the organizations that are hosting this forum today in order to address all of the issues we're going to talk about today. I'm the senator who raised the minimum wage. I'm the senator who's expanded child care eligibility. I have a jobs and housing bill to revive the way unions have built not only low-income rentals, but modest equity homeownership opportunities here. I haven't just come to affordability now that I'm running for mayor. This is my life's vocation. I have been in public service for 20 years. I worked in the labor movement for 10. I have walked every damn picket line I can to stand with working people, and I want to be a mayor that delivers for you.
This is not just about paying lip service to progressive values. This is about the experience in building the systems at City Hall to get every single agency working together to do the right thing and to protect working people.
Thank you very much. Broad strokes question on the topic tonight. Again, 90 seconds to respond. We're going to take turns throughout the evening, just starting with each of you interrupting each question. 90 seconds for this one. What do you believe is going to be your most unique and impactful policy plan, specific one, to address the affordability crisis? And we'll start with, actually we'll start with you for the last ones. We'll start with Zohran.
Yes. I think one topic I'd highlight to address the affordability crisis is our commitment to building 200,000 new affordable homes over the next 10 years. This is a commitment that triples what the city is currently set to build, and this is a commitment that states very clearly that the public sector has a role in addressing a crisis at the scale of the housing crisis. And that role is to not only build more housing, but to build housing that is actually affordable. Because when we're talking about those 200,000 homes, we're talking about homes for low-income seniors. We're talking about homes for a family of four that makes $72,000 a year. We're talking about homes for a New Yorker who lives in the shelter system that has been approved to have a voucher but cannot find a landlord who is willing to accept it. We're talking about homes for New Yorkers who live on subway platforms. These are the New Yorkers who are failed time and again by an exclusive reliance on the market. These are the New Yorkers who we are going to serve through this kind of a commitment, doing it in tandem with a belief that we do need to upzone wealthier neighborhoods, that we do need to build more density around transit hubs, and we do need to end the practice of requiring parking lots as part of housing construction.
Thank you. Senator Ramos?
Thank you. I work very closely with the building trades. I think given the right tools, they can build many more affordable housing units in our city. What's been missing is a political will from an executive that knows what it's like to be a working class person, knows what it's like for Con Ed to shut off your lights, to wake up to an empty fridge, and can actually push the pedal to the metal and get everybody working and pushing tin to address our affordable housing crisis. We have to also build a lot of resiliency projects in order to be able to retrofit our buildings and really think forward about climate resiliency. But all of that needs a structure to support working parents. So one of the biggest things I want to do is finish my work, getting to universal child care, picking up where this Trump Democrat's about to leave us off. Because we thought, as a former member of the de Blasio administration that was part of the team that delivered on universal pre-K, I'll tell you, I thought that the next Democratic mayor was at least going to get us to 2-year-olds. No, it turned out that he was going to play games with 3-year-olds, and that's not okay. So I'm hoping that by the end of my first 4 years as your mayor, I'll be able to get us at least to 2 care, if not beyond, because child care should be available at a moment's notice. Using this, just like we use Open Table to find a reservation at our favorite restaurant, it should be available to all parents. It's about investing in parents, it's about investing in child care workers with living wages, it's about making sure we're investing in our children who are 20 years away from being workers themselves.
As a son of labor, my late daddy was an 1199 SEIU man. As someone who runs a small business myself right now, let's start from the baseline. When you have 48% of New Yorkers and Americans who don't have more than $400 in their bank account if an emergency happens. To your question around top priority on affordability, it's multi-pronged. First, I do believe that we need to have a guaranteed income for all New Yorkers across New York City. If you start from that baseline, you're able to put more money in your pocket and keep more money in your pocket. Second, we have to eliminate the usage of credit scores being used for rent and home ownership. It is a discriminatory practice that has regularly been the reason why people can't get access to an affordable home. Third, I'm the only person that said from the beginning around a Mitchell-Lama 2.0 where you are building middle-class housing, because effectively what's happening right now is that you have to be too rich or just poor enough to get access to housing in New York. You have people that are living in New York, that are working in New York, but living in New Jersey, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania right now. Go a step further. I was the first person to say that we needed universal child care and that it could be paid for consistently without raising a dime on New Yorkers. If you do all of these things at the same time, then you actually will help people have more money in their pocket and also reduce the cost of what's happening. But go a step further. We have to have a local median income because AMI is discriminatory and it doesn't make any sense. Area median income is including Westchester County and other counties, not in New York City right now. And so if you want to address affordability, you need someone who will change the dynamic because institutionalized racism is actually hurting us every single day.
Questions, and again, 90 seconds to respond to these. First question on transit, we have Karen Hamilton from Riders Alliance.
Good evening. I'm so happy to hear that you all mentioned the commitment to transit, and as you know, people are struggling every day to get to work and places they need to be. So I'd love to hear what your plans are for long-term transit, making sure that it's efficient, effective, and affordable. Thank you.
Start with Senator Ramos.
Thank you. Well, my plans are 200 miles of bus lanes, making sure that they're protected by bicycle lanes where possible, making sure that we're actually complying with the law on e-bikes so that we have an actual system and a public education about where we expect those e-bikes to be, in the road, not on the sidewalk, but also making sure that there are actual speed limits posted, just like we do for cars. We can't ignore that our delivery workers and everyone else is making the transition to bicycles. It's an important transition. Consumer behavior is very difficult to do, but government has a responsibility to make sure our design is working towards that. I want, even though, you know, my dream is that the New York City mayor should be able to appoint the New York City Transit president at the MTA. That's not law right now, unfortunately. And everything that we do with the MTA requires Albany's assistance. And that's important to know. However, I really want to be able to champion rapid bus transit along our biggest and longest corridors, much like we have not only in Europe but in Latin America, where so many of us come from. They are light years ahead of where New York City is now, and we really need to catch up so that we can get the outer boroughs the public transit they need, so that we can decongest our streets and make sure that people can breathe again. It's part of climate resiliency, and it's part of just an efficient use of our streets.
Thank you.
Raise your hand if you're tired of the trains being late. That's what I experienced getting here. My wife went out on a train coming here. The 5 train got delayed again, over and over again. Seems like every train you're on is always late. If you're living anywhere else around the world, our trains are on time, they're safe, they're clean, and they're more efficient. So first and foremost, we have to make sure that our public transportation is actually working for us. Fundamentally, the grid is delayed. We have essentially a 1900 system in 2025. We don't have enough union workers that we have hired to make sure we can actually clean out the routes to make it more efficient and more effective. And actually utilizing smart city technology so that our trains can be running on time as well as our buses. Second, we actually need a better system on congestion pricing because what's being laid out right now is not working. They actually didn't listen to residents. It doesn't make sense that at 60th Street, where you have 2 one-ways before you get there, it's effectively forcing people to go into that zone that's not effective at all. Now, the intent of congestion pricing is to reduce what's happening around traffic. However, if we did this differently, for example, we should exempt any public sector work to have to pay congestion pricing going in and out. If you do that, it makes more sense. Go a step further. You can have the approach of making sure that our buses and our trains are running more effectively so that you can actually make sure someone is getting to work and getting to home on time. But lastly, it is important that the absolute disrespect that has happened to too many of our transit workers and their employees has to be held to a different standard. You should not be able to beat up someone who is doing their job consistently. It is wrong, it's unacceptable in that regard. People should be able to get home and be able to be safe, and we can do that with a new vision around public transportation.
You know, to your question of efficient, effective, and affordable. Right now, we say that we have a world-class public transit system. But we know, as people who ride it every single day, that it is far from it. The bus average speed across New York City is about 8 miles an hour, which is the speed of when I walk from Bowling Green to here, because I thought I was We need to have buses that are fast. We need to have buses that are the most reliable and convenient option New Yorkers can have. I believe that we can make them so by making them fast and making them free. Now, when we make those buses free, we can see that we can reduce dwell time at bus stops. We can see that we address the crisis of affordability. Because while I have supported Fair Fares, which is a program that addresses specific income levels of New Yorkers, we find that when we make something universal, it has so many more times the impact than when we ask people to go through a program, when we ask people to go through an application. Because so often what we're asking is a working class New Yorker to trust a bureaucracy that has already failed them. And when we made these buses free, we saw ridership increases that we wouldn't have expected. 38% on weekends. And to what Michael Blake was just saying about, respect for bus drivers, we have not seen a more efficient strategy at reducing assaults for bus drivers than making those buses free. 38.9%. Additionally, I think all of us here agree the necessity of bus lanes. We've seen with the 14th Street busway, travel times can be cut by close to 50%. That is what every single New Yorker deserves. Because we know that as you get into a neighborhood that is either majority black or majority brown, the bus is even slower than when it is in the hearts of Manhattan. That is something that has to change. Furthermore, I think we need to use the bully pulpit of the New York City Mayor's platform to advocate for the MTA's capital plan, because so much of the money that we are fighting for right now would make these trains far more reliable than they are today.
Thank you. For our next session on public education, New York City has a unique public education system. City University of New York schools serve hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers. Vera Ordaz of Professional Staff Congress CUNY will ask about the future of that system.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. So, CUNY is the largest urban university in the United States. Its tens of thousands of faculty and staff serve over 225,000 students. Research consistently shows that CUNY schools are amongst the best at moving low and moderate income families up the socioeconomic ladder. Since fiscal year 2021, funding for CUNY has been cut approximately, CUNY community colleges have been cut approximately $95 million. We've lost over 400 positions, impacting everything from academic advising to maintenance and operations. So, how would you approach funding at CUNY? And beyond restoring these cuts, what is your vision for the future of the university?
Very timely question. I laid out my vision around education just last night on New York One. It's on our site. You go to blakefornyc.com and under my vision, you'll see that there. First and foremost, not only restorative in terms of funding, but reimagining what needs to happen. I grew up on University in Burnside, so I saw Bronx Community College across the street from me all the time, and all was happening across our city. I believe we should go back to how it used to be and go and further. That every kid who graduates from a New York City school should be about opportunity to go to CUNY automatically. And you should have opportunity to make sure that not only is free, but it's well expanded. I do believe we should go a step further and making sure we have an expanded My Brother's Keeper program and a My Sister's Keeper program, which I was the lead on that. I led that effort in the Assembly. We're still the only state in the country to be able to do that. Because when you do that, it transforms the lives of everyone in our community, especially our communities of color. We also, though, have to make sure to create the systems for success around CUNY. And so when you have students who are saying, I'm struggling when it comes to working homelessness and or transportation, I think anyone who's going to a CUNY school should have the opportunity that we provide them with free transportation and ensure that we have nonprofit reimbursement to make sure that someone has a home as well. Because those are the dynamics that are the silent ones that people are not talking through. Fundamentally, we have to raise the wages so that we are treating our employees, our faculty, and the entire staff better and more supportive. All of these conditions change what's happening within our schools. So when we think about what CUNY can be and the reimagination of education, we have to create a system right now where we're training and mobilizing next global citizens. We are not doing that in our school system right now. We're effectively training kids and students to pass a test. We're actually not educating them to be global citizens.
Thank you.
The cuts that you speak of are just unacceptable. And they are from a mayor who had promised a very different vision for CUNY. And what CUNY deserves is to go back to being the crown jewel of public education. What it is today is in many ways a crumbling institution that is underfunded by both city and state. While I've been in the Assembly, I have been proud to be a supporter, and a loud supporter at that, for the New Deal for CUNY, which would call for significant funding increases for CUNY to also get us back to the point where CUNY was free. But going beyond it just being free, to ensure that we don't have a system that is so reliant on adjunct labor and undercutting and underpaying faculty members at every single turn. I'm also proud to be the prime sponsor of legislation that we introduced called the Repair Act. This is legislation that would repeal Columbia and NYU's property tax exemptions, over $320 million a year they do not pay in property taxes, and route that money directly to CUNY. Now, to be clear, that is money that should be supplementing what CUNY should already be receiving, not supplanting it. And as someone who is attacked by the New York Post on a regular basis, I am proud to say this is an area of bipartisan agreement. The New York Post wrote an editorial endorsing my legislation. Now, they hate Columbia and NYU for different reasons. But we don't need to ask why, because what we need to do is build the coalitions that become undeniable to deliver the funding that working class New Yorkers have been denied for too many years.
My vision for CUNY is one that is free. That's what every single mayor should be working towards, and we should get as close to it as possible. The cuts that have been made to CUNY as of late not only impact staff, but our CUNY buildings are actually in desperate need of capital funding. And that is where the city should be playing a very huge role. Whether it's the bathrooms, the classrooms, the common areas, making sure that our youth have a dignified place to learn and that our professors have a dignified place to teach is critical to us really developing the next generations of leadership. In order to achieve much of what we need to do right now, where we have shortages in nurses, we have shortages of doctors, we have shortages of mental health professionals, we have shortages of firefighters, of police officers, of so many other titles that are essential to keeping each other safe, that we need to make sure we're building those pipelines through CUNY. So I was very heartened to see that Governor Hochul, in her State of the State, acknowledged that a lot of these jobs, training for a lot of these jobs should happen through public education and should be free to the student. That is something that I fully support, but especially the city needs to stand up in creating that pipeline to mental health services, because human services are what's going to save New York City. We are on our way to build a care economy to supplement our service economy. This means that everyone from those who are home attendants to nurses to behavioral therapists, social workers, psychiatrists, you name it, that is the future of New York City's economy, and CUNY has to continue being a part of that, just like it's been for the past many decades, in being arm to arm with the labor movement and building a strong middle class in New York City. That is to be supported and completely unequivocal.
Longo from Raise Up, New York.
Buenas noches para todos. Mi nombre es Elizabeth Polanco. Me siento muy cómoda con lo que ustedes están presentando. Son exactamente los problemas que tenemos todos. Lo único que necesitamos son las soluciones a ello. La calculadora de salario digno en el Instituto de Massachusetts considera que el salario mínimo de Nueva York debería pasar de los $30. ¿Y por qué esto? Porque el costo de la vida aquí para nosotros es demasiado alto. En mi caso, con lo que yo gano, con un salario mínimo que son 600 y algo, que me llevo a la casa 500 menos, es lo que llega a mi cuenta, porque lo otro se queda igualmente en el Estado. Entonces, con esto yo no tengo cómo sostener una familia si no tengo varios trabajos, ni darle calidad de vida a nuestros hijos. Entonces, pienso, ¿cómo podemos pagar una renta al costo que está? Tenemos que vivir 10 gente en un apartamento para poder sostener este pago. Tenemos que comer lo que aparezca en un food pantry o buscar de todas maneras cómo nosotros alimentarnos, cómo cuidar nuestros hijos, cómo vestir y cómo sostener nuestra economía, nuestra familia y nuestro vivir. Y solamente estoy hablando de necesidades básicas, no estamos hablando de nada superficial, solo de lo que necesitamos para vivir. Entonces, si el salario mínimo debería ser por lo menos $30 la hora, como se considera en este instituto, y otras ciudades han aumentado su salario, como Seattle paga 26, 20 y algo, y la ciudad de Los Ángeles, que va a aumentar su salario a $30 en el 2028 para hotelería y aeropuerto. Entonces, ellos lo han podido lograr porque lo han hecho desde lo local, lo han hecho a nivel local, no lo han hecho con la institucional. Entonces, esto representa para nosotros una forma de qué se puede hacer con nosotros, con el salario en la ciudad de Nueva York para que se pueda incrementar. ¿Cómo ustedes podrían lograr un incremento en nuestra ciudad, que ya sea a nivel local o federal?
Same question in English translation.
Thank you. So, as you heard from Elizabeth Polanco, the 2024 MIT Living Wage Calculator puts the living wage for New York City at over $30 an hour. But the actual minimum wage here today is just $16.50 an hour, about half that. Ms. Polanco shared some of her personal experiences. She works for a little more than that minimum wage level, and the math just doesn't work. She's simply not able to afford rent, food, transportation, sort of the costs of basic necessities. So she and her family are forced to, despite the fact that she works full-time, are forced to rely on food pantries and other strategies to get by. It's not right, it's not dignified. Other high-cost U.S. cities have minimum wages much higher than New York's and closer to a living wage. Seattle's minimum wage today in 2025 is $20.76. So that's more than $4 higher than New York's, and New York is a higher cost place to live. Los Angeles recently passed an increase to $30 an hour by 2028. It'll phase in over those years that covers hospitality and airport workers in that city. A big reason for the difference is that in many other states, cities have the power to raise the minimum wage higher than the level of the state minimum wage. So here comes the question. It has two parts. As mayor, one, would you fight for New York City to be able to raise its minimum wage higher than the level of the state minimum wage? And then two, if so, how high would you seek to raise the minimum wage in New York City? Thank you.
I'm going to start with Zohran Mamdani on this one.
Thank you so much for your question. Today we launched our proposal to raise the minimum wage in New York City to $30 an hour by 2030. And it's a proposal that is underpinned by our belief that the city can actually set the minimum wage. The city has not tried since 1962, and we believe that the legal grounds of denying that minimum wage increase are very shaky and very defeatable. And the reason that we have to raise the minimum wage to that amount is that what we are looking at right now are poverty wages. We are looking at wages that are out of step with productivity. And we know that if workers' wages do not keep up with their productivity, then that money is going elsewhere. And where it has gone are incredible profits for the wealthiest corporations across New York City, New York State, and the country. And what it has left, actually, is city government, state government, federal government giving out more support to New Yorkers because so many of these very New Yorkers cannot afford to be able to survive on their actual wages. And so what we are proposing is to finally put that labor, the worth of that labor, back into workers' pockets. And we are confident in our ability to do so. We are confident in the necessity to do so, because if we don't, we are going to continue to see an exodus of working class people outside of the city. And ultimately, we have a choice of, do we want working class New Yorkers to live in New York City, or do we want them to live in New Jersey or Pennsylvania?
Thank you. Senator Ramos.
Subir el salario mínimo en la ciudad de Nueva York es muy importante. Es por eso que hace 2 años yo pude introducir el proyecto de ley para poder hacerlo, y de hecho la coalición Raise Up New York fue una de mis parejas claves para nosotros no solamente incrementar el salario mínimo. I can speak in English too. I know a few. I'm a New Yorker. We're bilingual here. Para poder subir el salario mínimo, nos tocó pasar legislación al nivel estatal. Ustedes, gracias a Dios, nos pudieron ayudar. Fue una coalición de organizaciones sin ánimo de lucro y los sindicatos para poder nosotros pedir a la gobernadora de que nos subiera no solamente el salario mínimo, sino atarlo al índice de inflación, que es muy importante. Nunca lo habíamos hecho en la historia de esta ciudad y de este estado. Desafortunadamente, la ciudad no tiene el derecho o el poder de cambiar el salario mínimo. De hecho, yo cargo legislación en el Senado para poder asegurarnos de que las ciudades y las municipalidades sí tengan ese poder. Entonces, es muy importante que el papel que juegue el alcalde o la alcaldesa pueda abogar con la gobernadora, porque va a seguir siendo Kathy Hochul el 1 de enero de 2026, para nosotros poder abogar efectivamente por ese incremento que estamos buscando. In English, we worked very hard with this coalition in order to raise the minimum wage already. I'm very proud of the work that we did. I'm not proud of what the minimum wage is. It is not a living wage, but this is the truth and the experience of actually legislating these things. You have to bring in all of the stakeholders. You have to take everything into account. And guess what? On January 1st, 2026, when we have a new mayor, it's still going to be Kathy Hochul who is in the Capitol working. And I have experience in negotiating wages with Kathy Hochul. I'm hoping that with my advocacy as mayor, we can continue to raise the minimum wage. I've already been able to tie it to inflation. That was historic. New York had never ever done it before. But we have to continue to push that fight and make sure that we get to a living wage in a way that, yes, we hit corporations. I don't care about that. But Amazon has destroyed our commercial corridors, and we do have to keep our small businesses in mind. And I'm sure, because of the coalition of small businesses that we had, in order to raise the wage now, that they'd be down for us to do it again.
Thank you. We're going to hear next from Robert. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. That's right. Please.
We had to sell dinners to pay rent when I was growing up in the Bronx. My mama was homeless in Jamaica, slept on church pews. Just a few days ago when I was at the supermarket, you're paying $14 for some eggs and $11 for milk. I want to be very clear. A minimum wage is not acceptable and it's not enough, because the MIT report you referenced, the $30 livable wage was for a family without any children. The livable wage in that report indicated for a family with 2 children, you'd have $69 an hour just to make it in New York City. And so that's the reason why I've said from the beginning that we have to have a guaranteed income that is proportional to the livable wage of that family. Because having $31 or $32 an hour is not actually helping you pay your bills if you're spending $14 on eggs and $11 on milk. And so when you think about it from that threshold, you'll have businesses who will say, we can't pay for this. However, if you actually make sure that we get more people back into the unutilized commercial real estate across New York City, you will generate more revenue that we can then put back into the coffers to pay for us increasing to a livable wage. And lastly, we have $3.1 billion in reserves that are not being utilized. Treat this like the emergency that it is. During COVID, we get checks out to help people with their bills. There is no reason why we can't also have that same approach to make sure you're helping New Yorkers to pay their bills as well. If you have that kind of approach and you're serious in that regard, you'll actually not just have minimum wage, but you'll have a livable wage that New Yorkers need right now.
Of New Yorkers Union for Childcare.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Robert, and I'm with New Yorkers for Childcare. And as we know, the cost of childcare is forcing many families to leave the city. With the rising costs that are all around us, they have to make difficult decisions, and a lot of them are realizing that they're not able to stay in the city anymore and have to relocate. For myself, my daughter currently has a free 3K seat, but prior to that, we spent over $18,000 in childcare. Many other families are in those circumstances and don't really have a way to deal with that. So it's really concerning. So my question is, what will you do, please give specifics on what you will do to lower costs and stem this exodus of the families that are the lifeblood of the city and being faced with the stark choice of having to relocate elsewhere.
Thank you. We'll start with Senator Ramos on that one.
Okay, I'll stick to English this time. Building out a child care system is perhaps one of the most important things the next mayor can deliver on for New York City. When we delivered on universal pre-K during the last administration, we were very careful to make sure that we were delivering on free, high-quality, full-day pre-K in order to really be responsive to what parents needed. Now, the truth is, a lot of people aren't working 9-to-5s anymore. So we actually have to make sure that we have childcare available at any time of day. Yes, for the 9-to-5s, construction workers go into work a lot earlier. The hospitality workers go into work at all hours of the day. But also there should be childcare at a moment's notice in case of an emergency. Maybe it's a medical emergency, maybe you finally got that job interview that you've always wanted. This is why I've been so hard at work trying to get rid of the minimum wage requirement. Because if you don't know, you have to earn at least minimum wage in New York State in order to access our child care subsidies. How ridiculous is that? Unfortunately, Kathy Hochul vetoed my bill this past December, but I'm really hoping to get it included in this budget this coming April 1st. But we have to build out the capacity. It's at least a 6-agency effort to make sure that we're doing it responsibly, with responsible adults paying wages, making sure that we're providing for the child care workers themselves, but of course, making sure that our children are actually subjected to socio-emotional learning. It's not babysitting, it's child rearing. I want to be able to at least get us to 2 care by the end of my first 4 years as your mayor. And if I can go further than that, that would be incredible. We're going to need a little bit of Albany's help in order to do so. I, right now, for the past 7 years, have been carrying the bill to do universal pre-K, not a study for it, not an aspirational dream, a prescriptive bill as to how to build out the system to do it, but paid for by the top 5% of corporations, mostly financial institutions in New York State. We can do this. This isn't a pipe dream. It's been done. We just have to continue that hard work and deliver for working families.
I have a lot to say. We were doing really well at the beginning on the time checks. I want to remind all candidates we've got 90-second time checks right up front. Mr. Blake.
We absolutely have to have universal child care. A mayor is a manager of a $100 billion enterprise. There is no good reason that in a $100 billion budget in New York City and a $200 billion budget in New York State that we can't pay for this. Take away from other efforts that should not have the same kind of funding resource. For example, why on earth do we have essentially a strategic resource group, which essentially is a mini mafia within NYPD, as opposed to utilizing that money to make sure that we're helping our parents and families with child care? Fundamentally, right? Like it's abhorrent. It's unacceptable. Second, when De Blasio went for a universal 3K, a lot of that came from federal funding that is now running out. Let's be very clear. You have a compromised asset in Eric Adams that's going to lead to less funding for our communities, which will lead to less funding to our nonprofits. And so you have to not only take money from the reserves, but let's also be clear to take a step further. Nonprofits such as Nuestros Niños and Grand Street Settlement, who right now were being shut down because of the absurdity of Eric Adams, because they wouldn't pay them on time, If we actually pay our nonprofit providers up front, rather than have them being reimbursed and give them grants, then you actually can make sure that universal child care is implemented so that you can realize your dreams. New York City should not be a place where you're wondering how I'm gonna pay for my kids to be protected and provided for. We can change that right now.
Often when you talk about universal child care, one of the first things that comes up is how are you going to pay for it? And I think as we answer that question, we have to ask, how are we paying for it right now? Because we have seen studies that in the last few years alone, New York City has lost more than $20 billion in economic activity because families are leaving this city purely because of child care costs. And when we saw in Quebec, when they embarked upon universal child care, they saw a 10-to-1 return on their investment. Because there were even more mothers entering the workforce now that the care that had previously been gendered and required of them was now being taken care of by the city. We can see those same results in New York City. And we can see that by building on the incredible successes of universal pre-K and what should have been the incredible successes of 3K before this mayor decided to wage war with it. Now, to the question of how we pay for something like this. How do we pay for removing a $20,000 to $25,000 a year expense off of the backs of working class families? We don't have to look that far. We can just look across the river to New Jersey. New Jersey has a corporate tax rate of 11.5%. New York, 7.25%. If we were to simply match that tax rate, we would raise enough money to pay for universal child care, and estimates are around $6 billion, as well as making every bus free, about $650 million. And we would do so without having to fear that any company would leave New York City, because our state tax law pertains to businesses that do business in New York, not that are headquartered here. And no one is going to leave the 10th largest GDP in the world because they are facing a slightly higher tax burden.
Thank you very much. Housing is often New Yorkers' #1 expense. I don't think there's any disagreement among the three of you or any of the candidates about the need for more affordable housing, but the pathway to it isn't always clear, and maybe there's some differences there. We're going to hear next from New York Communities for Change member and Jamel Henderson of Citizen Action, representing the tenant block, with their question on housing.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Charlene. The powerful real estate industry frequently partners with the city to build private affordable housing and to secure private contracts to manage NYCHA housing. Under Mayor Adams, this partnership has let the real estate industries call the shots, while the city holds the purse strings.
Here's the question. What will, you hear me?
Yeah.
What will your administration do to ensure that organized tenants and the public are in the driver's seat, not profit-motivated developers, when it comes to permanently affordable housing and NYCHA public housing? Please be specific.
I like that. You're going to start us off this time. Actually, you know what? I'm sorry. Former Assembly member Michael Blake, you're going to start us off this time.
I represented the largest concentration of NYCHA when I was in the Assembly. And I'm sick and tired of consistently what was happening, where elevators weren't working, boilers weren't working, you weren't having heat and hot water, and we were regularly saying we're going to blame the feds. Actually, what we could just do is take money out of a $200 billion budget in Albany and $100 billion in New York City, and make sure you address a $1 billion problem to address what's happening within NYCHA. Actually have more of our tenant leaders from our citywide, our CCOP, because regularly you're not at the table. I do believe that there has to be a rent freeze. Zohran and I said this from the jump, because fundamentally it's wrong across the board that people are trying to have more opportunities, but we actually need more tenant leaders to be at the table for management decisions. And that's the reason why we can't have a RAD process that's happening regularly, where private management is coming in and effectively trying to tell you what's happening on your developments. I think we need to go a step further. Okay, Senator Ramos also agreed right. But then we also have to reimagine what's happening around rent stabilization, as well as, again, a Mitchell-Lama 2.0. City of Yes did not actually fix the real problems. You had Mayor Adams literally say that they didn't have enough that they built, that they will build, and they're actually not addressing affordability. So then what are we talking about? Effectively was a tax break for developers to win. And what we have to do is actually incentivize for developers to build for middle class and low class and working class housing at the same time, not just for one demographic group. If you do all of those things, you protect what's happening in NYCHA, you protect rent stabilization, and you actually have tenants at the table. I saw this in the South Bronx, and we can do this across the city.
Thank you very much.
As part of our commitment to build 200,000 new affordable homes that are permanently rent stabilized over the next 10 years, there's also a commitment to double the amount of money the city currently spends on preserving NYCHA. Altogether, this looks like a $100 billion commitment over 10 years in capital funds. Now, the way that we can do this is because a lot of these kind of scale of capital projects, like we're seeing with the MTA's capital fund, can be done through municipal bonding. So in Albany, the MTA has about a $35 billion gap for their fund right now. We can pay for that through about $1.6 billion every year being bonded out. These things are possible. The question is of political will. Because right now what we have is a perverse set of incentives, where it's cheaper for NYCHA to keep the scaffolding up and pay the fine than it is to actually fix the facade. That's what we are saying is acceptable right now. And I represent the largest public housing development in North America, Queensbridge Houses. And it is a privilege. And I answer the phone of those constituents, and I have to come up with a reason as to why a 72-year-old woman has to walk up 8 flights of stairs. And there is no reason. It simply comes from the fact that we want to play a game of hot potato with who's actually responsible, saying it's the feds, all while we know that we are not going to get that funding from Washington, D.C. We need to start bringing it from New York City and from Albany. And until Michael Bloomberg, the city had a far more active role in owning its responsibility and accountability when it came to NYCHA. We are going to start taking the steps to actually deliver the services that working class New Yorkers deserve when they live in NYCHA.
Thank you.
NYCHA needs serious repairs, and who's better to do it than the NYCHA residents themselves? I actually see NYCHA as the actual supportive housing that we already have. They are NORCs, they are families who are trying to make it, they are people with disabilities. There should be an intensive care for every single one of our campuses. No to RAD, no to demolishing Chelsea houses, no to any attack on our public housing. We need an expansion of it, actually, and I would love to get to a place where we work with our congressional delegation to get there, or including even with our new city council members who are going to come in next year, right? So we need to have real partnership across levels to make sure that we are delivering for those tenants in NYCHA so that the buildings are safe for people of all ages, of all stripes. Because right now, we are not investing in NYCHA in the way that we should, and New York City is the landlord. So the mayor is responsible for the future of NYCHA. Real estate has a tight grip, especially related properties has a tight grip on this town. And it's unfair, it's unjust. I am proud to be the mayoral candidate with the least amount of real estate contributions running this year. We want a working class movement that really does respond to the need to expand and make sure that we make NYCHA really strong, livable communities with urban agriculture, with workforce development, with mental health services, with so much that our people need. We have missed a great opportunity with NYCHA. It's a diamond in the rough.
From Clara Calvo, a member of Free Majority, with a question on the critical issue of home care.
Woo! Hi everybody. I hope everybody enjoying Raise the Voice. I'm Clara Calvo. I work in home care service for more than 20 years. Home care, everybody talk about everything less than home care. Home care is the best or the more important job in here. Why? Because New York City, every day come elderly and disabled people. The mental disabled that can work or can walk, and we need the service. we bring the service. But almost the people now want to work in the home care service. Why? For the salary. Now have no benefits. Now have not health insurance. And the hospital say, I put $1 million here, $1 million here, but they not putting home care service. And she have a grandma, she have a kid, she have a mother, and nobody think about home care. Home care is the more important job that I have in my life. I worked for more than 20 years. And then I said, what you gonna do for the salary? Because with $17, $16 in New York City, nobody survive. We live in the, like the poor people, more poor people in the city. It's the elderly people and the home care worker. I want you to answer the question. Jessica, please.
We're going to stick with our order, but I am going to ask, because I know there's another event we need to get to tonight, so please really try to stick to the time limits. So we have just a couple questions left, but we'll take you where long we can get you. Some member, we're going to start with you this time, I believe.
Okay. First of all, thank you for your work. It is backbreaking work, and it is work that this city relies upon, and it is work that you have not been paid fairly for. And as an assembly member, I've seen firsthand the political games that are played when it comes to raising the wage for home care workers. Now, so much of this discussion is also a discussion around Medicaid. And that is something that the Trump administration has in its crosshairs as something it wants to attack. And as the next mayor of New York City, I will stand up and make it very clear as to what the consequences of that kind of attack would be. Now, we are often told that we have to attack Medicaid because we need to save money. But you know where we could save money? We could save money by eliminating the private insurers within Medicaid. That would save money. Yeah. We don't need to save money by cutting back the wages of the hard-working home care attendants themselves. So you have my word that I will continue to stand up for home care workers, and I will do so whether as an assembly member or as a mayor. And I will ensure that whenever there is that conversation around Medicaid, we have a clear understanding of who we're talking about, the work that they do, and what is actually on the line. Because right now, all of that is being erased as if it's just a conversation about numbers.
Senator.
As the only woman running for mayor, I have an obligation to bring up the feminization of poverty. The work that we do as women and as women of color has been devalued and has been disrespected since the beginning of time. I am running for office because I want women to make money. I want us to be paid fair wages. I want us to be able to afford to buy a home, not just pay rent. Many of us are single mothers. It is damn hard to have a one household income here in New York City. It is tough. Doing home health work has largely been seen as domestic work. Domestic work that has historically been done by mostly black women. They were left out of the labor law on purpose, something that we've been working very hard to correct across different sectors. And this is why one of the first things we have to do is do away with this BS about 3 consecutive shifts. 24-hour work is for nobody. Nobody. Nobody can do that. Everybody has the right to 8 hours of rest, 8 hours to work, and 8 hours to do as you please with your family, because you deserve rest and you deserve to be able to live here. So even though as mayor we don't have the power to set wages, I am committed to building a care economy that works for the care providers and for the patients as well.
My mom did home care for years. It wasn't just about the absolutely unacceptable amount of money that you were making or not making. It was the silent sacrifices that I watched her have to make, right? or you're helping someone in their hardest moments there. Which is why, again, we can't just talk about how we get someone to a minimum wage in these conversations. It has to be a livable wage and beyond. If you do that, you provide the dignity that you deserve. We do not have policies that are actually helping our communities. And I say this all the time. You could be a man and a feminist at the same time. And we have sexist, racist, and institutionalized poverty mindset policies that are hurting over and over again. So not only do we have to make sure that you get the fundamental wages that you need, but it's about how do we create a condition of support and success and dignity and respect that you need. We are not actually helping our communities. Now taking a step further, when we think about how do we actually pay for more support here, we have to make sure that we transform Medicaid reimbursements locally and in state. Because fundamentally, we're effectively saying to everyone right now, you know what, to your residents for Medicaid and for Medicare, I hope you will be able to cover costs. I hope you'll be able to pay for these things. We're dealing with this in many ways in our own life right now. You regularly have systems that are not helping us. So you need someone who has compassion around this. If we're serious about this, we can help you in home care and others.
Thank you. We are running significantly late at this point. I know that a couple of our candidates have committed to attend a different forum. Is that everybody?
In Bay Ridge.
Bay Ridge.
All three of you.
Yeah, like, yeah, we have to, yeah.
All three of us have to go. Okay, got it. Is there a way that we can get these questions answered? Like,
maybe if they give us the topic, we usually kind of can already tell the question.
I mean, if
we're gonna
if you just let her ask the question. If you can go.
She's at the mic, let her ask the question.
Yeah, as quick as you can, but we're just going to go to Sandy Abramson for
I hear you, but we were told it would end at 8, and we said that we
We're left out again, thank you.
No, we're going to go to Sandy Abramson from Jewish Racial and Economic Justice on a question about affordability for older New
There are
Yorkers.
1.8 million New York City residents over the age of 60. That's larger than the whole city of Philadelphia where I grew up. Over half are people of color and immigrants. More than 1 in 5 residents over 60 live in poverty. Yet funding for the Department of Aging has remained stagnant for the past decade plus at only 0.5% of the city budget. Given this growing population, how would your administration address the needs of aging New Yorkers like me? Thank you.
30 seconds.
Listen, I'm born and raised in New York, and I'm gonna die in New York. This is my city. This is my city, and no billionaire and no governor that doesn't want to tax billionaires is gonna take it away from me.
That's right.
And by the way, that includes fighting back this push for Medicare Advantage at the city level. We have to protect and keep our promises to our seniors. Shout out to PSC for being so hard at work at doing that the right way. I'm very much looking forward to solving that problem with you because we can't trust anything that comes out of Project 2025. I'm going to fold in a little bit of what I think about in terms of housing. We talk about Mitchell-Lama, which is incredible. I also want to revive the precursor to Mitchell-Lama, which was the way unions used to build housing here in New York City. So think Penn South, think Boss, in the Bronx, Co-op City, amalgamated houses, Westchester, the Big Six, you name it. There have already been incredible integrated communities where our seniors are able to not only live affordably, but also live a good quality of life with their wellness thought through. I think that's really important in making sure that they keep a social life. But obviously making sure that our home care and everything that our seniors need is readily available within a radius is really, really important. I've been working with the Caring Majority now for many, many years trying to figure out how to be able to build all of these things. And in the interest of time, I'll just make a pledge to be able to continue to do that now as an executive and not just a legislator.
We have one last question.
Yep, no, I got you.
Okay.
I get it. We have to be very focused in addressing what's happening around the disrespect around Medicare. Equally, people attacking pensions. you have worked too hard to be in a space that after you retire, you're wondering how I'm going to pay my bills. And so for those that are aging, and I'm not believing that you're aging right now at all, we have to be very focused in this regard. We have to have protections and stop the attacks that are happening. You have a mayor right now that is actively attacking the protections of seniors in terms of retirement and pension. It's unacceptable, it's not right. But we also have to make sure we're actually supporting our senior centers. We have to make sure we provide more funding for our Department of Aging. And doing all these different dynamics will actually create a better condition as well. Lastly, this also, I know it's for Jews for Racial and Economic Justice. It's also a part, how do we make sure we provide our support that has been happening against you. The anti-Semitism as well as the Islamophobia that's happening on both sides is unacceptable. I wanted to make sure I acknowledge that as well.
Thank you. And the last question, on union density from Helen S. Jarrett from Communication Workers of America, and I do appreciate you guys saying.
Thank you all for the robust discussion y'all been having tonight, and thank you for coming and staying to the end. My name is Helen S. Jarrett, and I'm a proud public sector worker and member of CWA Local 1180. One of the most effective ways to make this city more affordable is by making sure that more workers have a strong union jobs. Also, because we know that union jobs come with better pay, better benefits, and more job security than non-union work. But since coming into office, Donald Trump and his allies have openly declared war on the federal workforce, including firing former CWA counsel Jennifer Abruzzo from the National Labor Relations Board. What concrete things can you do as mayor to protect union workers from a hostile White House and expand union organizing so that more workers, public and private, can share in the city's prosperity? Thank you.
I know it's your time here, so you're trying to keep to 30 seconds. If you can, that'd be great.
I come from a union household. It's personal for me. And so first and foremost, we got to stop those that are trying to attack you when you're on picket lines. We got to make sure you actually have proper wages, higher benefits, and actual protections. And going a step further to that, if we have more union jobs, we'll have better opportunities to address the challenge around true cost of living. You have developers and others who don't want that to happen because they want to make more money against you. And so if we do this right and properly, you actually have the dignity that you deserve. And that's the way in the vision I would have. From a Mitchell-Lama 2.0 to how we have nonprofit reimbursement to actually mobilizing, utilizing union workers, if we do those things, you'll actually have the protections that you need. I'm only speaking fast. I'm not just, I recognize I'm Jamaican. I speak fast all the time, but it says 30 seconds here, so we shall be mindful of that.
I'm working on this right now as your senator, but we are going to have to expand and go back to serve here in New York State. The other thing is that we don't know what's going to happen to OSHA federally, so it's perhaps time that we have a NYOSHA, NYOSHA, here in New York State, so that we are not leaving our workers to get injured with nobody to protect them at the federal level.
Woo. Thank you. We are getting, I know that you guys need to go.
Yeah.
Okay, if you have a closing remark, if you want to tell us if you're going to commit to, for a one-round question, commit to freezing the rent for all rent stabilized tenants while you're closing, tell us how you feel about that. That would be great.
Yes, I want us to get a rent freeze that is responsible by getting water rates under control, and I want to do property tax reform so that poor people, working families, can actually afford their mortgages as well. It is out of control. The city's out of compliance. There's been many lawsuits, and the buck has to stop with me as your mayor. So I'm here to ask you for your vote. I'm here to ask you for your support, for your donations. We are about to kick off petitioning in a few weeks. It's time to hit the pedal to the metal. I have been endorsed now by 3 different unions, more than any other candidate. A few minutes ago, I was also endorsed by the Chelsea Democrats here in Manhattan. We are growing. I am hoping to count on your support so that we can hit the ground running, knock on doors, and get out the vote, and prove to this country that New Yorkers do vote and care about who leads their city. Thank you.
Short answer is yes. I've already said I'll be in support of the rent freeze. I've stated that. We'll continue to say that right there. Who is remixing right now? What's going on? Oh, okay. You know, I'm from the Bronx. I'm used to hip hop right there.
In Queens, we got hip hop. We're not going to do this here.
So
I wouldn't scratch a record without us.
So It started on 1520 Sedgwick. But nonetheless, let's focus right here. If you believe that we can focus on the true cost of living with guaranteed income and universal child care, if you believe that we can have truly affordable housing through a Mitchell-Lama 2.0 by eliminating user credit scores, if you believe that we can have a new vision around education, where we have civics, financial literacy, and mental health for our students before they graduate, and make sure that every child that graduates from New York City School can go into CUNY and make it free again, then I'm asking for your support. We were consistently laying out a vision on how to help New Yorkers, and if you believe, as the only candidate who has White House, State House, and local experience, my name is Michael Blake, and I ask for your support. Our entire vision is at blakefornyc.com. You can see our education plan that we rolled out. You can see how we want to help New Yorkers to win and thrive again. Thank you, and God bless everybody.
Thank you very much to the candidates. Thank you to the organizers of this event.
Tomorrow's the last day to